rotting the beams. Years in your pocket, but none in your dreams. Same tired eyes, same tired plans. A fire in your chest, but no place to land. Steps on a road that never bends. They smile when you lose, they wait for the end. Hope slips away, soft as the rain. The wheel keeps turning, but it don't change a thing. On if you want, but the path just folds. Speak your truth, but the air stays cold. They dig in deep, they won't feel the flame. You will never, never break that chain. Never break that chain. Lips full of salt, eyes full of gray. Don't reach too high, they always say. Your hands are young, your thoughts are wild, but time here runs like a fatherless child. The roots are thick, the roots are proud. They drink the sky, they choke the ground. You scream in waves, you break in vain. Still they whisper, keep things the same. Run if you want, but the path just folds. Speak your truth, but the air stays cold. They dig in deep, they won't feel the flame. You will never, never break that chain. Never break that chain. Born to move, built to stand. Freedom forged by working hands. Raise the flag, hold the line. We were made for this time. Got a strong spirit wide. We don't run, we don't hide. We are the stars of freedom, we carry the flame. We fight, we pray, we rise again. God bless the brave, God bless the land. We are the stars, we take a stand. Voices loud, hearts alive. Every stripe, every right. From the fields to city steel. We are truth, we are real. Bound by grace, built to last. We don't fear the storm we pass. We are the stars of freedom, we carry the flame. We fight, we pray, we rise again. God bless the brave, God bless the land. We are the stars, we take a stand.
The Freedom's Legacy Conference to celebrate America's 250th anniversary and renew the American spirit. It started right in Machias, where patriots banded together against a British Navy which was ordered to take their timber. Because of the local staunch resistance, the British began to refer to this area as the Hornet's Nest. You're invited to relive those moments with speakers like Bobby Charles, Robert Cross, and more. The Freedom's Legacy Conference, celebrating 250 years of American pride, kicks off January 31st of 2026. Doors open at 8 a.m., lunch is provided, but you have to bring your blazing American spirit. From darkness to light, from bondage to the greatest nation on earth. Join us to celebrate just how amazing it is to be an American.
Space, the final frontier. These are the stories of the USS Dorego and its continuing mission to boldly go where no Republican has gone before. Bring Milja and Shenbel back to Federation space alive. Godspeed, Captain Charles. Red alert! Take us out of warp and bring forward shields to max. We're approaching the Slaver Collective. The Romulan Democratos was detected here 2 hours ago. Captain, I'm detecting subspace distortions that could indicate a cloaked Romulan warbird is in the area. That's the smallest warbird I've ever seen. The Democratos is charging her forward disruptor banks. Let's give them the full Sunday breakfast. Don't let them fire first! Captain's log, stardate 46155. The USS Dorego has captured Milja and Shenbel. They're accused of impersonating high-ranking Starfleet officers, and then abusing that stolen authority to flood our colony worlds with Borg soldiers. They will stand trial in Federation court. It doesn't have to be like this, Sparky! You didn't have to betray the people!
I am the people!
Did you bring the pizza? Get her out of here, she'll see her day in court. You have traveled far.
Maybe too far.
I sense a great anger within you, as I have sensed in many of your kind. Why have you come here? What is it that you seek?
Everything I knew and loved is dead. I don't know how to live without them. All that's keeping me alive is the rage and unyielding fire
No! Oh. Please, I was just following orders.
that only knows pain.
I cannot teach you how to die.
Then please teach me how to live.
You must let go of your anger. This is the favored weapon of the Dem side.
The attempt on my credibility has left me horribly scarred.
Let the symbols of your fear fall away at last. One is not enough. The Empire's hold on the North is too strong.
The Empire will not tolerate the extremists! They must be crushed!
One is the beginning, and thousands more will follow the same feeling that brought him to us.
Do you not see it now, Dark Cleopo? The truth! The Force has chosen. The Force has chosen. The Force has chosen. The Force has chosen the light.
Then I heard the voice of the Lord, saying, Whom shall I send? And who will go for us? And I said, Here am I. Send me.
Now approaching lunar sunrise, and for all the people back on Earth, the crew of Apollo 8 has a message that we would like to send to you. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth, and the earth was without form and void, and darkness was upon the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God moved upon the face of the waters. And God said, Let there be light. And there was light. And God saw the light, that it was good, and divided the light from the darkness.
The time has come. Believe in Maine. Your love is all we need. All we need to break through to our destiny. Our destiny.
Yes, we made it through another week. How about that, everybody? Made it through another week. Yes, including the Epstein files, believe it or not. Calm down. It's a live stream. Calm down. It's just a live stream, okay? We do have an important announcement before we get too deep into the show this evening. We have a special guest. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Maynardville. Tonight, I present to you the host of the Muddy Waters podcast, straight from Cumberland County, Maine, the awesome, the legendary Chuck Ellis. Welcome.
Well, I wasn't expecting that kind of an intro, but I appreciate it. Happy to be here. I'm excited to do anything we can do to, help us, shift Maine in the right direction. And I mean that both literally and metaphorically.
The right direction. Absolutely. Now, Chuck, before we get into the formalities of where you come from and why, I do want to drag your attention back to a little bit of nostalgia. I like to follow, I don't smoke, but I like to follow this account on X. It's Cigarette Nostalgia. Post stuff from the past. It's, it's pretty masculine centric stuff. And I had never seen Sylvester Stallone, Arnold Schwarzenegger, and Die Hard guy, Kevin Costner.
Why does it say Kevin? It seems like Bruce Willis to me.
Yeah, Bruce Willis is that guy.
Yeah.
I was like, that's why I got confused, because I was like, that's not it. That's why I said Die Hard guy, because I got my wires crossed. But I've never seen these three in an interview together. So let's just take 33 seconds and listen to this.
It's good to see three such physical and heroic figures sitting together in a friendly way. But you were all going up for the same roles, really, most of the time, aren't you?
No. All the parts that we played have been really defined and very definitive. Like, I couldn't have played the Terminator. I know that. And Bruce, what he did with Die Hard, is again, a definitive character. They don't, you align it to Rambo, but that's not true. It's a totally different kind of character. I think we've all carved out our niches, and they really don't overlap that much.
It's good to see.
Yep. Never saw that before, and it's a good point. Everybody has a role to play. And speaking of roles, though, Chuck, you host the Muddy Waters podcast, but I know that's not the only thing you do.
That's right. So one of the many hats that I wear is being the chair of the Cumberland County Republican Committee. And technically, I think I'm also the chair of the Westbrook Republicans, because you got to wear as many hats as possible.
A hat for your hat.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. Yeah. So one of the big things that I have to do is, try to get, Cumberland County is probably the most challenging county for Republicans in the state. It is. It's not probably, it is. It's where we have the least number of seats, and people complain and are frustrated at how many of the seats go unchallenged in Portland. If you looked at the demographics and saw what happened when people actually do run, you might have a little bit better of an understanding as to why it's hard to motivate somebody to be willing to put themselves up in a place like Portland. But that's one of the things that we have to do, is we got to get candidates to run for office, and we have to win. I do think the road to winning Maine runs through Cumberland County, and I do think that there are some seats that if we can pick up the seats that we need to pick up and that are within range here in Cumberland County, I think we can win the state, both in terms of House and Senate. So,
absolutely. And, Chuck brings up a really important point to all of this. The thing that we need to remember in the back of our mind is that there are portions of Maine that appear deep blue at the moment. Folks are losing their appreciation for leftist politics as the rotten fruit comes to bear, if you will. So they're looking for a way out, and we happen to have that, the helicopter ladder to get out of the trouble they've gotten themselves into. So one of the things that our creator preaches is forgiveness. It's a little hard to muster at times, but our leftist friends are definitely going to be asking that of us going forward, as they're even losing faith in good old Janet Mills, of all people.
They sure are. And I think ultimately we're in a dangerous position. I was talking about this with when I had Robert Wessels on earlier today, when he was on to announce that he was the first candidate, regardless of party, to get his signatures approved and officially be on the ballot for the governor's race. So he and then I go ahead and lose my train of thought. So Janet Mills, yeah. So one of the concerns, obviously, like, Janet Mills is the governor, and she's championed a lot of the policies that are destroying our state.
Oh, yeah.
But one of the dangers that we face is that if we go too hard at attacking her prior to the primary, we almost certainly ensure that Graham Plattner has the best possible chance of being their candidate, which is a frightening prospect when it comes to the general. So But at the same time, like, how do we most effectively attack the Democrat candidates in the gubernatorial race is by talking about basically Janet Mills' policy is basically the fact that these people are at best just going to continue more of the same, and at worst, I don't even want to imagine what they could cook up.
Well, we are definitely going to see some of the worst tonight. That's for sure. But what I would like to not so gently transition into is the Epstein files. There's really no gentle way or polite way to get into this. Now, what I wanted to begin with is our discussion leads into more local things, of course, the events that are happening here related to at least the two names so far that have surfaced of great interest related to Maine. We'll get into those in a minute. But Steve Bannon sat down with the infamous Jeffrey Epstein and asked him a few questions about his opinions of himself. And the way he behaves in this less than a minute clip is bizarre, to say the least. So let's take a listen.
What are you, class 3 sexual predator?
Tier 1.
Was tier 1's the highest and worst?
No, I'm
the lowest.
I'm the lowest. Your child's life.
Do you think you're the devil himself?
No, but I do have a good mirror.
It's a serious question.
Sorry.
Do you think you're the devil himself?
I don't know. Why would you say that?
Because you have all the attributes. You're incredibly smart. You remember the devil is somebody knows
smart?
The devil's brilliant. You read Milton's Paradise Lost.
No, the devil scares me.
Satan is at
spit it out, Bannon.
Number 1 or 2 archangel, and the reason he goes to hell and leads the rebellion is because he can't be the top guy. And his thing is, I'd rather reign in hell than serve in heaven.
I saw that in a movie.
Now, it's quick. It's quick. Did you see how Epstein took that from real world theology, his actual crimes, and then moved that into a discussion about movies?
I watched the entire interview. Actually, what's interesting is, like, I watched the beginning of it probably, I don't know, like a week ago or something like that, or right after it came out. And then I couldn't dedicate the time to it. And so last night, before going to bed, I watched most of it. And then this morning I finished it up. It's just a fascinating, horrifying interview. I shouldn't say horrifying. I think what's horrifying is that given how horrible of a human being he obviously was, where he is almost playful about the fact that he's a class 1 sexual predator, right? And laughs at the fact he's like, I'm afraid of the devil, but then he smiles immediately after, right? Like he doesn't really appear to have any degree of fear, and yet he seems in a lot of ways, you watch the interview, he seems like a normal, rational, very intelligent, I think is what Bannon is saying, person that's just a normal human being. And it's hard. And he even talks at one point in the interview about how women have this instinct about understanding what is creepy and who is creepy and so it's like he knows this. Anyway, I don't know what else to say, but he
is an interesting person. I don't know if you catch Asmongold's clips or not, but he was streaming a couple of days ago watching this, and he kept exclaiming over and over again, this dude is the main character. We killed the main character, guys. That's why the world is going to hell. And they're talking about it like Epstein was the main character in a video game. And that's why he had all this power and connection, and just nobody cared. And everybody turned to him like he was some single source of information. And meanwhile, he's got cheat codes on. So.
I actually so my takeaway from watching it is actually that he is, if you listen to Bannon and how Bannon talks to him, he talks down to him, right? Yeah. And he's very critical, and I don't think that's inappropriate but that doesn't bother Epstein at all, which kind of leads me to believe that he is very used to being in that position. Like that he was a cog, obviously a very intelligent cog, but he was a cog in a machine. He was not some architect. He was intelligent. He was not in control.
Yeah, what's clear about him is that the decisions he was making were purely on the financial level.
Right.
While he was creating all of this, child abuse mayhem that he was creating, his major focus was in investment, where money goes. And obviously that means that someone else is the one that's telling people where the bullets goes.
Right.
That's his role, is to make sure that there was cash and blackmail, is what it seems to be. In whatever network he was a part of, he appears to be the cash and blackmail guy.
At the very least, the cash guy. I think there are a number of people. Mike Benz is probably one of the most famous for popularizing the idea that there may not have even been a blackmail element. That may be smoke and mirrors to get us distracted. But he, at the very least, you hear throughout this, and Bannon clearly states it, that that he asked him if he feels guilty about the fact that he made all of his money helping bad people get rich. Now, again, largely by taking his advice, they did it. What they were doing there, they were doing legally. But like the idea that he was asking if you even feel bad about it. Again, somebody who's like that degree, I don't care what degree of sexual predator. If you are a sexual predator, like your conscience is seared to the point of like no return, essentially. And so if he's in that space, I don't know that he's going to feel guilty really about anything. But it is interesting that he asked the question, and basically Epstein doesn't really care. He's like, I was just helping them with this. But so at the very least, though, he made bad people much more wealthy and gave them the capacity to do far more evil.
Right.
I think it's possible, if Mike Benz is right, it's possible that that the sexual stuff was kind of just more because he himself was problematic. He had this addiction, is essentially this moral corruption, and maybe he shared it with some other people. It doesn't necessarily. I haven't seen a ton of evidence so far to suggest that there's anything behind using it to manipulate people, if that makes sense. There's been a lot of smoke about that. I don't know if there's like any fire there or not.
So there's a great deal of emails that are, of course, out there, and there's a lot of coded language in them, like what was going around in the Pizzagate conversation. And there is a lot of conversation about pizza, and a lot of the people that are uncovering this are just regular old people that are searching the databases and what they have been able to correlate through their searches, and of course with Grok and ChatGPT helping, they can't find a single picture on the internet or a single write-up or a single acknowledgement of Epstein eating pizza. He talks about it over 10,000 times.
Via email.
Yeah. And so you'd think a guy talking about pizza that much, like Asmongold says, I don't think I've talked about pizza 10,000 times in my entire life.
I might have, but no, I'm just kidding. But no, I agreed. And I enjoy pizza, but definitely haven't likely
not
said
that
it many times.
That's for sure.
Well, definitely not that kind, obviously. But at the very least, like one of the things again you gather through the interview is like he definitely was morally corrupt enough where he would not have had a problem coordinating something like that.
Correct.
Right. He doesn't like, it's another equation to him. Like everything is, I shouldn't say everything. Again, one of the fascinating things about the conversation is they try to go into the financial crisis. I don't know how much of this you've watched or how much you want to go into this. You can tell me to shut up anytime.
Good to talk about it. It's leading into the next thing.
Yeah, so they went into the financial crisis, and they're trying to get, like, Bannon is like looking at things, and number one, I think I think this was intended to be something else before Epstein ended up getting arrested and whatnot. There was some other intention behind this, but either way, so he's asking the question, and he was trying to get answers out of Epstein that they would be able to use to help the common man understand what the heck he's talking about. And so he would constantly like press in a bit deeper and I tell Epstein that he thought he was full of shit, which I thought was funny. Like, no, I need you to answer this question. Right. And because, but there are a couple of things about the conversation is being somebody who's so intensely mathematical, right? For him, everything's an equation to be solved, but there was this recognition of the reality that some equations can't be solved. And one of the things about that he talks about with the financial crisis, and they try to say like, well, what, how did you not know this was coming? And he explains that it's a very complex system that no one, definitely not most world leaders. And by the way, this is something that when he talks about the financial side of things, I think I believe that he is accurate. Like I don't know if I'd say 100%, but he is right about the fact that most world leaders do not understand financial markets. But that also, like, though we can look back and we can say there are these indicators that we can tell now, we could if we saw them now, we might think something is coming, right? But even with those indicators, like there's not necessarily any way to predict that financial crisis was going to happen, because it's a very complex system and it's really hard to understand like what is going to cause it to do one thing or another on a global scale. And so, that part of the conversation for me was very fascinating. And the highlighting the point that most world leaders, if they know anything about the financial markets, it's mostly how to balance their own budget. And aside from that, they don't really know much. And that's kind of the scary thing, is we've got this incredibly complex system that, most people who are making the decisions about how to handle it and how to manage it and try to help the economy don't understand. But he did talk about one of the other things that was interesting is this is actually where this is part of where he was talking about how women have this instinct about creepy men, right? Is that there are people who are successful in the markets. They kind of feel the market and they have instinct to know how to handle certain types of situations. So some of it, yes, is intellectual understanding, but some of it is also like more mystical, if that makes sense. It's more hard to completely understand because of how complex it is. And I think we're fortunate right now in that I think Trump is somebody who, I don't know that he could explain to you the financial markets nearly as well. He couldn't, as probably Epstein could have. But he has those instincts and he has things that he knows will be helpful for the economy. And that is probably more important. But it was no surprise to hear him say that Ben Bernanke and all, Janet Yellen and all these other people who are these supposed gurus who run the Fed don't actually even understand the thing that they're running.
Well, and that brings me to the next topic here. We do have the erasure of the George J. Mitchell Scholarship. And this comes from the Maine Wire. The top Maine Democrat, former U.S. Senate leader, whitewashed from internal scholarship due to Epstein sex fallout. So it may not be that we have direct evidence of crimes committed, but we do have people acting as though there were some crimes committed. So what's fascinating about all of this is that it kicked off a discussion here in Maine about, wait a minute, how deep does this guy go? You think of Maine, you think woods, water, wildlife, Acadia, postcards, that kind of stuff. We're not really a place where you expect a spy master, to be putting down dark roots. But apparently, such was not the case. Mr. Epstein was, in fact, nestled deep into the heart of Maine, as we came to find out that our governor, Madam Janet Mills, now has been named in the Epstein files. This does not mean that she has committed any crime, or rather she has committed any child abuse related crime. Let's put it that way. And moreover, it means that she has simply been part of a effort to cover up a child abuse incident, let's put it that way, and apparently a cocaine trafficking ring. So that's out in the world now.
Janet Mills would never do anything with cocaine.
Of course not. But
yeah, that's pretty wild.
This has been one of the most interesting things because it parallels what we have an issue with Jan already with, is the Somali fraud, and how her administration, as Steve Robinson had reported on several times now, especially a couple of weeks ago, that I'll just leave this up here because it's moving stuff anyway. What's going on is that the Somali fraud was known to Janet Mills' administration. They are talking about it in the correspondence that Steve was able to use Grok to program a program that searched and found all of this stuff. They had marked all of the stuff that was like, whoa, this is not right. We can't do this. This is fraud. And her administration just didn't follow up on it. The simple act of, whoops, we lost it in the mail is enough to foul, apparently, fraud investigations to the tune of several $1 million. Now, come to find out, in the Epstein files, there's information pertaining to Jan participating in a child abuse scandal and cocaine, apparently. Now, you combine those two things together, and what you have is someone who looks more guilty than they would have had they simply done their job with the fraud. And it's interesting to me that this has snowballed on Jan just like that on the heels of the state address.
Yeah, but it's not the first time that Austin Powers, I mean, Janet Mills has been involved in covering stuff up or ignoring stuff that's going on right underneath her nose, right? Like when you one of the things that has, if you listen to the Ray Richardson show, which he talks about it all the time, and we bring it up on the podcast occasionally, which is the number of children that have died under state care, right? And so they did this audit, essentially this study with Bill Diamond, the late Honorable Bill Diamond, and came to the conclusion that there are all these problems within her DHHS system, and it was just like this epidemic. And what happens? What does she do? Well, nothing actually, but the person who's in charge resigned, and she promoted the person who had been involved in the organization for all the time that the bad stuff was happening. So she is really great at turning a blind eye on the problems, on bad things that are happening, rather than addressing them. So this is just more of the same for me, but it is pretty crazy. They wouldn't comment for some reason. John Featherston of the Maine Wire went and tried to get a comment out of their office, and surprisingly, they said nothing.
Well, let's take a listen to that incident right here.
Hi, how are you? Nice to see you again. How are you? I was wondering if I could talk to somebody. I'm John from the Maine Wire. I was wondering if I could talk to somebody here on the staff about Governor Mills and Governor Mills appearing in the Epstein files. I was wondering if anybody could give me a comment on that. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
That poor girl looks like she just like deer in the headlights. Was not expecting.
Good to see you again. How you been?
Good. You?
Not bad. Thanks. Thanks for coming out to talk. I was just wondering. I mean, it was a very cursory, but I know Governor Mills showed up in the Epstein files, and I was just wondering if you guys are going to put out an official statement on it, or
shoot me an email and happy to take a look at it.
Okay, so just shoot you an email.
Shoot me an email.
Okay, great. Good
Thanks,
to see you.
John.
Good to see you. Thank you.
I like how they pretend like, no, this global wide sensation that has triggered terabytes of searches on Google. No, I have never heard of it. You'll have to send me an email and bring me up to speed on that.
Yeah, there's obviously they all probably got a memo that morning and were like, don't say anything about it. But it's what's funny, I love John. Like, he's so like polite. Like, he's going up and trying to talk to people. He's definitely a man without fear, even though he's been threatened and all that kind of stuff. And he keeps doing this stuff. But yeah, he's just so polite. Like, I would be like, I would have a hard time talking to some of those people, not being like snide and sarcastic. But he just is like, polite. Like, here, I'm from John Wire. I'm John from the Maine Wire. But obviously they're not going to say anything. Send me an email and I will look at it.
That's my favorite part. Like, I won't reply. I'll search for the coupon. You know what I mean? I don't know. You'll catch me on the flip side, I guess. But not to be outdone, of course, Steve Robinson decided to go into the heart of the lion's den as well, the George Hale Rick Tyler show, and decided to talk about what was going on with all of this. Because, you know, as much as I appreciate how Rick Tyler has carried on the air as a Republican in a high visibility space, you know, that's a very not good place to be in some parts of our history recently. So I appreciate his bravery on that part. I'm very tired of his soft paw attitude when it comes to everything. Like I'm so tired of him just playing games with these people in order to get him to come back again. So it's so good to see Steve go in there and say, no, 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 this is where the bear shit in the woods. We're not going to like go back and forth on this. This is the reality of it. So we'll take a little bit of a listen here. Obviously, we're not going to get through the whole thing, but this is a recording of what went down on the George Hale, Rick Tyler show just today, I believe.
Whenever Steve Robinson of the Maine Wire is maybe a little late in dialing in for a scheduled segment, I'm always worried and think we need to check the trunks of many Maine politicians and maybe Chinese grow operators. But he did call in his schedule, George. I think that's Steve dialing in on line 3 for GHRT.
Right on time.
Amazing.
Just passing out instructions this morning to my team.
The newly released Department of Justice records and those tied to Jeffrey Epstein. How is Janet Mills' name suddenly cropping up after the latest DOJ jump of Jeffrey Epstein files?
Yeah, and I will say we are the only news organization.
Man, that got me. Epstein. I wasn't ready for that. Isn't it? It's Steen. Everybody says it's Steen. That's weird. Epstein.
I've written about it so far. I read a thrilling story in the Bangor paper yesterday about the best pellet gun for dealing with your squirrel problem. But you won't read anything about the governor being released in the most sensational news story of the year.
So one of the things to remember in all of this as we're listening to this is that Steve is well aware that the Maine Wire is the lone gun out here. That they are the ones that are going out here, that they are not kicking down doors per se, but they're actually doing the hard gumshoe journalism, I guess you might call it, that actually matters, as opposed to like looking up what BuzzFeed is talking about, retrofitting that to Maine. You know, you get that. Bangor Daily News should not be putting out the tabloid articles that you see in 17 magazine. It just, it defies logic why these prestigious news sources are behaving as though they have to give tips on how to please your man this Christmas. It's bizarre.
So I guess just to start with, Jeffrey Epstein, infamous pedophile, billionaire, Democrat donor, Republican donor, connected guy, worked for maybe multiple intelligence services. And one of President Trump's core campaign promises was that he was going to bring transparency to the circumstances of his life and death. The allegation has always been that Jeffrey Epstein would bring powerful people, politicians, celebrities to his island or his rich properties, film them in various compromising ways, and then use that blackmail to wield power on behalf of foreign nation states or himself, or to make money or whatever. But there's always been a lot of mystery and intrigue around how he operated and what he was doing.
So as you were talking about with the Bannon interview, that to me felt like How to Make a Murderer, the kind of like you'd interrupt your found footage or like your creepy footage of a warehouse to show Epstein in his house doing that interview. And then you play the audio over like some creepy shadowy space as he was talking about something creepy. And that felt like what Bannon's intention was to go in there, get him activated, get him saying things that are crazy or sound crazy if they're cut out of context, and then put him in there with those cuts. But what ended up happening, one of the things that like for I don't know if are you Gen X, millennial?
Millennial, yeah.
Millennial. So for us, the whole housing collapse just was like out of nowhere. You graduate high school, boom, there's no more houses forever. And the auto workers union is going out too for some reason. And all of it was just happening at once. They hand you your diploma, the economy's collapsing. So Steve Bannon asked Epstein about what he was like the most adversarial president he'd ever encountered. And he said Bill Clinton because of the financial market around these subprime loans. And see, this contextualized all of the housing bubble, why it exploded in our faces when we graduated. Because what he explained is that they, by threatening lenders, they created a whole lending class of people that were getting loans that could never pay them back. And so the predictable happened in 2008 and the whole thing collapsed. And we just never had a sufficient explanation about this because all the powers that be didn't want to own up to how they had played a role in it. And so that was amazing. And so, you know, Steve bringing up like the mystery behind Epstein, it was kind of like blowing our minds because I don't know if you caught this, but he's all over gaming. You know, the microtransactions that are in video games, Epstein was behind that. He's the guy making recommendations. The worst thing about this is that he wanted the game to pay you back. So if you put money into the game, there was also a way to get like money or tokens or whatever rewards back out of the game. And the game companies decided, no, it goes one way. It's amazing.
That's so fascinating. I mean, like, obviously that's what casinos do, right?
Yes. Yep.
I'm glad that they didn't do it because it makes people more addicted. You know, and some people would make, I mean, people already make money off of games just by doing like the streaming and stuff like that. But
right.
Yeah, no, I would agree. Like Epstein on the financial crisis, and like kind of like if you've watched some of these other videos, they talk about like he kind of highlighted that at the time, anyway, people were doing a lot of blaming of the on derivatives, like this trading on derivatives, which wasn't the problem. The problem was that, you know, they had given loans. I mean, the short version is they had given loans to people that couldn't afford them. What he doesn't talk about in that video is that a big part of it too is that they gave out, adjustable rate mortgages.
Right.
And then the rates adjusted really aggressively, and people could have afforded it when they first got their house, but then all of a sudden they couldn't. But yeah, like, and that it was behind it was actually Clinton pushing for trying to get votes by getting people who otherwise would never have been able to buy a house to be able to buy a house. And
Bingo.
And I think, you know, what's interesting. I'm thinking this through, like, I don't know why we should think that in that interview he's being 100% transparent, right? Like,
it's true.
And I think that I think there's more going on. And I don't know that he necessarily could have directly predicted what was going to happen. But what we do know is that he's one of the most brilliant minds in the financial world. And we know that a lot of bad people got obscenely rich as a result of the financial crisis.
Yep.
So anyway.
President Trump promised transparency about that. There was an initial move by Attorney General Pam Bondi to release what was dubbed the Epstein files.
The binders.
That ended up being a photo op with a bunch of conservative influencers who were brought down to the White House and given binders filled with material that was basically already public. There was a lot of resentment from the conservative media toward Trump and toward Bondi from that. Some calls for her to resign. Now it seems that there, on a rolling basis, are a release of actual documents that have never been released to the public before, and they've all been dubbed the Epstein files. Now, underneath that heading, there are a bunch of different things. One category includes emails that Jeffrey sent to politicians, to his secretary, to different associates. There are also files related to investigations of his pedophilia crimes, financial crimes. And then there's also emails that were sent to the Southern District of New York, the DOJ office there, when they arrested Ghislaine Maxwell, who was his number two, his handler, his girlfriend of sorts. And they solicited essentially information or tips from the public about crimes that may be related to their investigation.
So as Steve is explaining, you know, the Epstein files aren't just Epstein's correspondence with the random the movers and shakers of the world. The Epstein files are very much the Epstein files in the X-Files kind of way, that anything even tangentially related to this guy is just shoved into this information release. So this is how we end up with information about Janet Mills in the files, despite Epstein not coming over and sitting on her head, that kind of thing. And I don't mean that in a weird way. It's just meant
Sure.
to be like her handler, right? But you go ahead, picture whatever you like out there on YouTube.
And the email, the record that contains information about Janet Mills, is within that third category, within the category of the tips solicited from the public about sex crimes that were possibly linked to Jeffrey Epstein or were of the same variety. And so what we find is an email from a Maine woman named Lori Handrahan, who grew up in Franklin County in New Sharon, claims to have known the Mills family growing up, spent some time in Sorrento, Maine as well, and had a messy divorce from 2009 to 2012. But her allegation is that Governor Janet Mills, who at the time of this allegation was a district attorney for Androscoggin County, Oxford, and Franklin counties.
Wow, that far back. My gosh. Jan has just been in. It's like our own private Hillary Clinton. Jeez.
Used her office to cover up the sex crimes of powerful, wealthy, influential men in Maine, including Senator George Mitchell, former Senator and Defense Secretary Bill Cohen, and other law enforcement officials.
I can't contribute a lot to this. The presence of a
George, my gosh. So the thing is that George Hale is a storied broadcaster, but every time I hear him, I think of that joke from the Muppet Treasure Island where there's old Tom, real old Tom, and dead Tom. I just picture George sitting there as like just one of those like iParty skeletons with a pair of sunglasses on and the microphone in front of him, you know? Not that he's dead. It's just the comedy of him being older than dirt at this point, you know? I think he might be older than the radio station he's talking in.
name and file, I'm told, does not automatically mean wrongdoing. Large document disclosures like this often include references to many public figures. How do you separate the fact from the fiction?
Well, it's a great question, and that's where reporting comes in. And I don't think we ever reported in our story, George, that it does imply wrongdoing. And I think a lot here hinges on Lori Handrahan and her credibility. And we've attempted to reach out to her. She didn't respond to my text messages, left me on red. I'll be curious to see if she does speak out about this, but in evaluating the credibility of what she had to say about the governor, we looked at the other claims she was making, including the claim about Andrew Demers, the 25-year Maine State Police veteran and 5-year FBI Maine State Police chief, who was arrested for child sex crimes, along with the former FBI chief in the Augusta station who was arrested for child sex crimes.
Yeah, I'm noticing a pattern. You noticing a pattern? There's a pattern here, isn't there?
Is the pattern that if Trump's name is mentioned in the Epstein files, he's automatically guilty, even if it's ancillary? But if a Democrat is mentioned, it's...
We've got to understand the nuance.
Right.
You got to understand the nuance. There's nuance here.
It doesn't necessarily mean wrongdoing. It's like
media literacy, guys. Media literacy. You know, yeah, I understand where you're coming from. The pattern I was going from is that there seems to be a bunch of predators running around just in broad daylight, and they're in positions of power. So it is true that the predator goes where the prey is.
Well, that's one of the things about like when people got sucked into QAnon. And like there are some people, I have no idea who. There are far more people that buy into QAnon than I would have expected, even still to this day. But the people that do, one of the things in QAnon that I was like, oh no, that's true. That's probably true. I don't have the evidence in front of me, but the idea of like an underground pedophilia ring of the rich and the powerful in the United States of America. There was not a part of me that was like, no, that's not true. I was like, why is this part of QAnon? This is just, isn't this like established fact? Don't they say this on Wikipedia? People, when you get power, and you're corrupt, and you like one of the things about being rich is it allows you to get away with being morally corrupt and being able to pay people off from being able to get caught about it, right? You can do evil things in broad daylight and still get away with it. It's unfortunate. Great movie called Chinatown kind of helps to explain this if you're looking for an older movie. And so it didn't surprise me for a second that some of these people did some really awful and horrible things. So it's devastating and frightening that this is something that's going on. It's so prevalent in our society at this point. And then you have people who are, whether Janet Mills is guilty of this or not, we don't know. But like it seems like partly because of she has a history at this point of covering things up or turning a blind eye, that it's very possible that she was part of covering up, abuses to women. Very feminist of her.
Yeah, there it is. That's the opportune word, isn't it? The believe all women here, right?
She talks about both of those individuals, and those stories. What she has to say are substantiated by clippings from the news archives, and both of them got what I would consider to be very light sentences, reminiscent of the very light sentence, I believe 9 months, that Elliot Cutler got for having child sexual exploitation material. So, altogether, her email doesn't read like a crazy rambling that sometimes Blueberry Broadcasting receives or the Maine Wire receives. But you're absolutely right that in no way does the name appearing in this document archive constitute an allegation of criminal behavior or even wrongdoing. There's also news clippings that are included among these articles. It's a big enough cache of documents, George, that if I search for George Hale, I might find a few hits coming back on it. Now, the same cannot be said for former Senate Majority Leader George Mitchell, who is known to...
That was quick. Okay, I don't know if you caught that, but Steve Robinson was like, you've been around for a while, George. You might be in here, and that was quick. That was quick. That was pretty good. That was pretty good, Steve. Usually, I guess George is getting slow in his old age. Usually, he's pretty quick to pipe up and be like, "Hey, no." He's usually, you got him, Steve.
Flown on the Lolita Express multiple times, was listed over a dozen times in Jeffrey Epstein's Little Black Phone Book, and is, I would say, a pal and friend of Jeff Epstein when he was alive. And Jeffrey Epstein, in one email, even describes having come up to Mount Desert Island to listen to George Mitchell's speech, describing him as clever and funny. So, I think that it really depends on the context and the broader information surrounding the allegation. Governor Mills, for her part, refusing to respond to any of the information in Lori's email, but will continue to follow up and try and report on I guess what the information that she provides, and if she has any other supporting documentation.
So again, like what we're looking at is more evidence of, let's say that this lady is telling the truth, that Jan swept under the rug what had happened to this young lady. Once again, we're seeing this sort of shovel it under the rug attitude with Jan, as we did with the Somali fraud. So it's hard to believe that Jan didn't have anything to do with this when you look at the background information to put in context the allegations put against him. So George Mitchell, though, he stepped out of the way very quickly. And of course, his scholarship was erased very quickly. And so that seems to suggest there's a stronger connection between him and Epstein that'll surface soon, as people tend not to react that way if the information is just your name came up. Right. Jeff Epstein thinks you're cute. That's
right.
Thinks you're cunning, son. He thinks you're cunning. But usually you don't go deleting yourself from a college because some guy from New York thinks you're cute,
Right. Yeah.
Elsewhere in now deleted internet posts, she's provided other information about pressure placed on Department of Health and Human Services officials by the governor when she was AG. because that information has now been scrubbed from the internet. We were not able to further substantiate that. But I would say, George, if Governor Paul LePage's name appeared in the exact same context in this email, with nothing else changed, don't you think maybe the Bangor Daily News or the Press Herald would have handled it just a little bit differently?
It's possible.
It's possible. Okay. All right. I'm going to blow a gasket. Because guess what happened? WGME deleted their coverage of this. They had once released documents that were released an article referencing the documents. My apologies. That named Janet Mills as being named in the Epstein files, but have since deleted that. Oh no, Page cannot be found. My goodness, everything, everywhere, all the time. Yeah, there you go. Wow, they want you to really get involved here. All these Jeez. What a website. Anyway, live broadcasting, everybody. You got to love it. Be careful where you point your mouse on WGME's website. Something may jump out and bite you. But we got Page not found here because they did delete that article. Not just update it, it's gone.
Right. Well,
amazing.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, like the mainstream media. I mean, part of the reason I do my podcast, I usually list this in the introduction of the podcast itself, and the reason that the Maine Wire exists, right, is because the mainstream media is just a propaganda arm, really, of the rich and the powerful. But right now, that's the Democrat Party. Mainstream media has probably always been to some degree under the thumb of the rich and the powerful, although. As there's been a substantial consolidation of power across the United States through the way that corporations have merged, and really like some of the laws that used to protect against that have largely been overlooked nationally. More and more is owned by fewer people. It allows for, it's a consolidation of power is really what it is. And so the more that's happened, the more the more powerful the politicians and the rich, obviously, as there are fewer of them and they have more money, have become. And so when you look at like what's happened now, is that they've all seemed to have sided with the Democrat Party with that agenda, and so
with the devil.
Yeah, essentially, yeah. And so it's no surprise that here in the state of Maine, they're going to protect the governor, who probably pays them money from the government to run stories for her, like the other news outlets do. I'm not sure, actually.
Owned by an ad agency. Owned by an ad agency.
Is this one? Because there's one of the organizations where her sister is somehow works for the organization. I can't remember which.
It was the Nurses or Hospital Association, some type of organization that's in charge of the hospitals. That's her sister.
Oh, okay. Well, I thought it was they were somehow connected to a media company, but maybe she
she has like a major, she bought like help or got a contract with Pulse Marketing, which owns Bangor Daily News.
Okay. That makes
sense.
sense.
They are very careful with how they portray Madame Mills,
Yeah.
But you know who is not careful about it and rather going to the heart of the truth is Steve Robinson. And that's right. X decided to reward him, as well as the several other platforms, almost 4 million impressions on this story across the Maine Wire's various platforms. And the liberal media in Today wrote, he says, I shit you not, about the best pellet guns for shooting squirrels.
Yep.
It's amazing. It's amazing to live in a time when the media is afraid of its own shadow. Like, I don't know if you're familiar with the name Edward R. Murrow. You remember Edward R.? Well, of course you weren't around, but do you remember hearing about him?
No, I don't believe so.
Well, he was the guy in the London Blitz that was recording what was going. He was beaming live, semi-live from the London Blitz. And then, of course, he went on to be part of the Vietnam situation. And, of course, he was targeted by McCarthy because of his reporting on the communists. And of course, this sort of, he had a show called See It Now, I think is what it was called, See It Now. And he's famous for smoking. One of his famous lines is, "We can't mistake slogans for solutions." The movie Good Night and Good Luck was based on him. This guy would be rolling in his grave You know, if he knew what Bangor Daily News and WGME and all these guys are doing, because he put himself on the line. Like McCarthy went after him, like legitimately brought him before Congress to explain himself. And these guys over here are like, well, you know, she paid for some advertising. We want to make sure that we keep her as a client. So, you know, let's not be too hard on her. And it's ridiculous. Of course, you find yourself in a situation where people see that their people are impervious to any type of speculation. As George was quick to jump on it and be like, hey, you know, Janet Mills is just in there, buddy. There's no smoking gun with her. You know, very quick to defend. But of course, when it was brought up about LePage, George is like, well, you know, it's possible that I could maybe see that LePage wasn't crazy involved in this. Maybe. And it's one of those things where it's a big leap for them to not see us as the evil Hydra agents from a Marvel movie. Whereas we're just like, that's a weirdo, but also another human being. We're not inventing like some super villain we have to delete from reality. They are.
Right.
And so it brings me into this next one right here about what's going on with how we're treating race in our schools. Now, I'm not bringing this up as like some type of, you know, tell me your craziest Nick Fuentes theory, Chuck. It's not at all what I'm trying to get into here. What I'm trying to highlight is their insanity about this, that they are forcing an issue that never existed in Maine. One of the things I like to talk about on this show is how, you know, before we had a bunch of invaders come in here, everybody who did tourist videos about Maine on YouTube, so I'm talking like 2016, 2017 back, there were a ton of videos that were done about like top 5 towns in Maine, top 5 towns in Maine to visit, top 5 winter places to visit in Maine. What's it like to live in Maine? Why is Maine Maine? Tons of videos about that because Stephen King made us a really quirky place for people to look at. And so all the comment sections are just full of people like, this is the least racist place. Maine people are so kind. I want to move here. I've never been to a place where people didn't treat me differently, but then I went to Maine and I'm just the same as them. And it's the comment sections are full. You run into the random guy in there that had trouble, but most of the comments are everybody saying like, this is the least prejudiced place on earth. It's like the Hobbit in the Shire. Nobody here had any ill will in their body when these tourists were coming through here, but we're being told in these videos that you're born racist.
Some children are taught very early that they do not have a right to be here.
Stolen land, something stolen land. Oh no, wrong skin color. Sorry.
These are messages that block kids' ability to live up to their human promise.
You mean like how white people don't have a homeland? Is that right? Sorry.
The Pine Project has been a component of my ongoing growth as a white educator. It's what it means.
Please stop growing. Please stop growing as a white educator. It's really starting to hurt you, dear. You could probably stand to reverse some of that growth as a white educator.
There may be a lack of awareness, of reflection.
A lack of awareness, says the lady with purple hair. It's like a Saturday Night Live skit. Like, I try not to watch this stuff before I come on live because a lot of it just cracks me up because these people are like earnestly approaching you like, I'm not the clown, you're the clown.
So what's crazy about this is like I watched right before the Maine Wire put this stuff out, Matt Walsh's movie, because this came out initially, I think last year, this type of, I think they're reposting it. Right. So Matt Walsh's movie, Am I Racist, had come out. And I remember after watching his, What is a Woman, thinking, how's he ever possibly going to top that? Right. Like, how is what he puts out going to in any way be relevant enough for me to care about it? And so I was like, all right, well, at the time I had the subscription to the Daily Wire and I was like, all right, I'll check it out. And so I watch it and I'm like, so when it comes to like the gender issue, like I had gone to the University of Maine at Farmington, worked with students there for 8 years afterwards. I was very much more familiar with that nonsense and the growth of it in our society. But I was much less aware of the crazy, because it's crazy and insane on both ends. But one of them I was just completely unaware of, and it's this one.
Right.
And so they show this and like the stuff that he's doing and the way that people are talking. I'm like, is that real? Is that real? And then immediately after I watch it, I start seeing these things from educators here in the state of Maine saying the exact same insane shit. Proceed.
Yeah, exactly.
Resulting in that aspect of your identity being somewhat invisible even to you.
One commonly held misconception about race is that the conversation is not appropriate at certain ages.
Whoa, it's like the girl version of Keith Olbermann. This is really tripping me out.
Babies start noticing race as early as 3 months of age.
What the hell are they talking about?
How do you measure that?
How many 3-month-old babies are being interviewed? And
what's your opinion of the black community, Junior? You're still sticking this kid in front of a mobile, you know, putting him down with warm milk. Like what opinion does he have about anybody looking like one way or another? Gosh.
Racial biases can develop between 4 and 5 years. Teachers and adults play a crucial role in shaping children's attitudes towards race.
Like dragging their attention to it and forcing them to talk about it and becoming hypersensitive about it to the point they become agitated around the topic and just attack anything that disagrees with them. Nice. Because this is what we need to be focusing on, Chuck. Instead of teaching these kids how to plant, you know, how to survive in the wilderness if they happen to get a little too far out and end up living Jack London's, you know, experience there with the, what, you know.
Yeah.
I'm not saying you crash a plane and go on an adventure, but it can happen.
But the reality is, like to your point, like they should. So the highlighting some of the things that they talk about, like even if you want to make an argument that these are things that should come up to a degree, there should be a conversation about. And I don't think anybody on the right is saying you shouldn't talk about race at all, right? Like you should, but you shouldn't teach like everybody that white people are racist and they're the only ones who can be racist, right? Like that's nonsense. And that seems to be like the crazy BS that they're teaching. But like when you hyper focus on it and you basically program kids with, this is how you can get attention. Now, are they saying that? No, not explicitly, but implicitly, essentially that's what they're doing. And they do, race is just one of the issues they do it with. Obviously they do it with sexuality, and they do it with even with things like anxiety and things like that. And so they're programming kids, they're programming them to be more helpless and have an excuse for whatever it is that they do that isn't appropriate.
Right.
And silence about race can reinforce racism.
And so
so if you don't talk about it, you're talking about it. And when you do talk about it, you're white. So it's you know, it's what are you going to do? You know, it's a never ending cycle of screw you.
we fail to intervene or delay these important conversations for the perfect moment or the perfect picture book, what we're doing is we're creating a vacuum for a child to start absorbing all of the biased, anti-Black, anti-immigrant ways of interpreting the patterns that they're seeing in the world.
So ask yourself, though. I mean, when I was coming up, I was born up in Holton. Around 10 years old, we ended up in like the Bangor Brewer area. And then I was about 12 when we settled on the mid-coast in Belfast. That's where I went to high school, yada, yada. I don't remember a single lynching.
No?
No, I just don't. I don't remember a single lynching. I don't remember anyone of any color being drugged behind a truck. The worst act of racism I can remember is the KKK ran around somewhere downstate throwing pamphlets out the back of a truck, and the only thing it did was clog the drains and cause a flood on one street. And I remember that was the worst act of racism when I was growing up here in Maine, because here's the thing. The cold makes us all equal. It doesn't matter what you look like when your furnace goes out. That's, you know, the truth is we keep a very honest society around here, because you may need your worst enemy's help in the middle of winter. You just don't burn bridges. And, you know, burning them over the way somebody looks is the stupidest thing you can do around here.
Yep.
The research indicates that silence about race can reinforce racism.
Children actively negotiate messages about race. If
What?
All right, Billy. If
So
you
I'm
tell
kin-
me you hate the blacks, you can have a cookie tonight. Come on down out of the tree fort and talk to me about the blacks. You can have a cookie. What are we talking? Negotiate? What is this? Is it the Brussels sprouts?
You know, this reminds me, like I'm a math guy, right? And so like I kind of have this show your work. Like you can't just show us the result of whatever you put into your equation. You have to show us the work. What are you talking about? Where is the evidence of this? Right? Like I grew up here in Maine and I did not grow up with an inherent racial bias, right? And I very few people that grew up here in Maine when I was a kid grew up racist. In fact, like so popular media, especially in the 90s, which is when I was growing up, 90s, early 2000s, there was so much popular media that were highlighting the problems with historic racism in America, which I think was real, by the way. For the record, right? We had real issues with race here as a country. We really did. And there are remnants of that. I think it would be idiotic and ignorant of us to suggest that there's no racism in America. But is racism like the problem that they claim it is? And the answer is absolutely not. If it was, we wouldn't have millions of Africans trying to get into the country for the opportunity for a better life.
Furthermore,
right?
they
Like,
wouldn't be staying here long if we were.
well, exactly. And so like this comment of this is what kids do. Like you can't speak something into existence. You're not God. And they have to, when I was working for one of my former employers, this was around transgenderism, but they had this thing that they said that like, you know, if the United States became more inclusive of transgenderism, it would save the US economy $15 billion. And I'm like, this seems equivalent to that because like you have to show your work. You can't just say kids do this. You have like if you're saying something that's off the fucking wall, you have to back it up. You can't just say it because you're a teacher.
Right.
And there's nothing to back up this nonsense.
Well, and this is this sort of erosion that I like to point out with people is that the greatest generation came back and attempted to create a utopia. When you go back and you listen to their interviews in the 80s where they're explaining the mistakes that they made with their children, they explain that PSA thing that we make fun of, you and masturbation, those kind of videos and things like that they used to make the kids sit through, that stuff drove them to go do the Summer of Love, to go freak out in the mud because they had lived in like a very Japanese style controlled environment where their behaviors were very, very, very monitored. Your towns would report on if Billy had his hair combed wrong, if he was hanging out with the wrong type of kids. You know, you'd hear that from Mrs. Johnson at the grocery store, that she saw Billy with a hot rod, you know, and that kind of thing. And you of course, would go after him and be like, hey, man, you have a reputation here with the family. You can't do that. Your father's a World War II veteran. What are you talking about? You got to get your act in order, mister. So these kids were completely suffocated. As soon as they got free, they went nuts. So what happened is that the greatest came back. They tried to create a utopia. The boomers hated that utopia, but then became the yuppies and decided this utopia thing's pretty cool, but let's put a cool paint job on it instead. So they tried to force a utopia. So the utopia was already rolling. They tried to force it into place. Then the millennials got a hold of it. And now we're trying to enforce that utopia. The one that was forced upon us, we're now trying to hall monitor, patrol it. And that's what you're seeing here in these videos are the like very early millennials, late Gen X who got like, you know, marinated in this are going around hall monitoring the culture about this utopia. And the Zoomers and the Alphas are only left with destroying that utopia. That's the only stage left for them, is to destroy the utopia. And this right here is the prime evidence for them. This is complete nonsense. This is the stuff you say when you're like on DMT talking to the clockwork elves, you know, it's just ridiculous. And it plays out like this insane stuff right here. Camden Hill students, they go out and they're marching this like almost the whole school is what it appears to be out here into the winter air to complain about absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. These young people have been put up into the idea that they are helping by doing this. See, I don't know if this happened to you, but in Belfast, at Troy Howard Middle School, when George Bush was president, they orchestrated a walkout of middle schoolers to go out to the center ring circle and then make protest posters. And they were playing like Vietnam War protest music. And this was opposing the expansion of the war into Iraq. And it was middle schoolers they were hauling out to do this. It was absolutely insane. And now you see this as like a fully matured thing where these kids are like, they're activists and they want to vote. And look what happens.
Well, this is exactly like we look at it. I think somebody I saw reposted this and effectively it was like, shouldn't we be somewhat concerned with the fact that it says it right there. Meanwhile, this is what I'm saying. So meanwhile, Maine ranks near the bottom of the nation in test scores, right? Like we are failing our children. And yet instead of focusing on education, we're focusing on what is actually more important to these people, which is social activism. What they want to create is activists. They don't care if you know why you're protesting. They don't care if you're educated on the issue. They just want you to be obedient and to be a good servant. They want more. And I'm going to say this, and I said something along these lines on the radio. So what's the point in stopping now? They want more Renee Goods.
Because I don't doubt that at all.
They want people who they can call victims.
Yes.
So that they can use that as an excuse to arrest power away from the current administration, or any Republican administration. But right now it's Trump. And like, if you listened to, and I don't pay attention to MSDNC, they call it MS now, I guess. But Rachel Maddow was citing some data about if we can just get this percentage of the population, then we can overthrow the administration. She didn't necessarily come out and say that, but it's a percentage of the population that the CIA would use to like determine whether or not they can actually overthrow a country. If you can get this percentage of the population, protesting, then we have enough of a base to be able to overthrow. Because you don't actually need 50% in order to overthrow. You just need a motivated minority. And they're like, we're approaching that. And so like she's literally talking and using their talking points. And so they need more of this. They need more Renee Goods and Adam Preddy's, anyway.
Well, and again, like you're right that they're trying to force this into becoming a much more front page issue than it is boiling down to be. And the reality is they can't seem to get that. So they've now turned to the schools to try and drag teenagers out in here and stuff like that. It's like Minneapolis canceled school for the whole month of January because of this. And so the kids are just now getting back in. And it was in the attempt to try and drain the kids out in the streets. Well, as it turns out, they'd rather be on Fortnite or Arc Raiders. Excuse me. Arc Raiders is the new thing. So they'd rather be playing Arc Raiders than doing this. And so,
but if they can do this instead of doing school,
bingo. Well, this is how they figured out, because they said, well, if we let them go home, they're just going to play video games. So we'll trap them at school and force them to go out here and give them the choice. You get to sit here and listen to how to do trigonometry, or you can go outside in the cold and take selfies with your friends looking like a hero. And that was the thing. It was this. We didn't have selfies back when I was offered the chance to walk out of math class. But even back then, I was like, no, I think this is ridiculous that little kids are going to have anything to say to the president about this, and that's why I didn't go out and do it. But the other kids were like, no, this is totally awesome. And they did. They just went outside and hung around. They didn't get any protesting done, even though the teachers were like playing the music and trying to get them to. I forget what they were playing, but I think it was like the Bruce Springsteen songs and stuff like that. And of course, it means something completely different to us because we didn't come up in the Vietnam era. So when it's Born in the USA is like a patriotic song to us, not the true meaning of it being a critique of the USA. We hear that and we're like, yeah, America. We do not get the negative connotation with that song whatsoever. So this is the poison that they're feeding them now, though. And that's the difficult thing about this is that they're now, as James O'Keefe went through out in Minnesota, they're now like threatening people who aren't political. So they thought that he was like some Portuguese news organization for a minute there. And then they went and were like trying to chase him off because he didn't have a side. They couldn't determine if he was a Republican or Democrat, so they kept trying to chase him off. It's amazing. But to top this off here, I have one final thing, and it's just one of those palate cleansers, I guess. So this comes from the Unquirer. It's from a few days ago. Probably seen it going around, but it's just some sweet relief here. We'll turn this down. But thank you.
What's the noise ordinance? What's the noise ordinance code? 0 on the 10 o'clock. What fucking fat pigs? It's okay. We don't promote Nazis. Fuck Nazis. Fuck Nazis.
And then they got arrested. So
Thanks
it's just
the
one of
Lord.
those. Yeah, it's just one of those things. The thing that we need to remember about this is that there are a quite deal of white liberal women out there that are trying to be the revolutionaries in all of this. And while that's its own little tango, what we need to remember is a great deal of these people who are acting this way are on SSRIs. And if you're not familiar, feel free to jump over to Google right now. SSRIs cause and exacerbate hallucinations, paranoia, and mania. So if people are already predisposed to these very paranoid thoughts that someone's going to come and get them, the Nazis are under their bed, Donald Trump is hiding in their closet, that kind of thing, then those drugs are going to make it 1,000 times worse for them. And this, again, is like completely swept under the rug because it's an antidepressant. It makes you feel good, honey. Meanwhile, they tell you the Nazis are coming, and because you're overdosing on the antidepressants because you're having a bad day, how many times have we seen this go around? Took my antidepressants with a whole bottle of wine. I can't imagine those two things mixed together. Then you throw in, by the way, the brain-altering chemicals in birth control. Now, I didn't know about this until my lesbian friend explained to me that there's a crap ton of mind-altering chemicals in birth control in order to get your body to not do what it's supposed to do. And so when she said she thinks this is why the majority of marriages are ending in a year, because the woman stops taking her birth control, and when the chemicals dry out, she hates her husband because the chemicals were driving her attraction, creating an altered state of mind.
Wow, that's...
Yeah.
Oh, I don't. I try not to mess with chemicals in general, right? Like I never, growing up, I smoked a little bit of weed, right? And I drink alcohol. I'm not opposed to having a beer. But when it comes to like medication, like I had a couple surgeries and I had to deal with some, I shouldn't say I had to, I was highly advised in a couple of circumstances because of the amount of pain to deal with like oxycodone, and I used it sparingly, and I was like didn't want to get addicted to it, so I was very careful with it. But generally speaking, I try to avoid using medication because like you don't know what it's doing to your body, right? And so and what it's doing therefore to your mind. Like people don't even understand that like the food that you eat has a substantial impact on your mental health. And like SSRIs are so dangerous. And as you've pointed, like birth control has its own, like, I don't know, like when you tell your body not to do something that it's supposed to do, that is not generally speaking long-term a good thing. Like in most of the scientific studies of telling your body not to do things that they're supposed to do typically leads to a very negative place. But there's a lot of that going on, unfortunately. But yeah, the SSRI epidemic, specifically among young women, is frightening. Anyway.
Well, and that's the graphic I have up here that's kind of explaining how that works. And again, feel free to Google it, do your own research on this stuff, read all the papers you like. They come to the same conclusions, that these create altered states of mind. And while you don't feel bad, you are experiencing those bad emotions still. And this is one of the things that they tell you when you're on lithium, is that the lithium makes you smile as you jump off the bridge. You're still depressed, you're still suicidal, but you're not really sad about it anymore.
Well, one of the things that I had heard, and I'd seen this happen in some cases, but is that people who are depressed would start taking antidepressants. And one of the ways in which they explained it, and then they would commit suicide. And one of the ways in which they explained it is that people were depressed, but they weren't motivated. And so these drugs gave them the motivation, essentially, which
Right.
it's not funny at all, right? But like the whole idea of taking it is to not commit suicide, right? It's to not be depressed. And instead what it does
It's
is
one of those comedic ironies. It's all right to
Right,
laugh
yeah.
at the juxtaposition that this person was lacking in the chemical motivation to go through with hurting themselves, and once they were given that, they did go through with the hurting themselves. That's a juxtaposition. That's okay to feel like, wow, okay, that's funny, but it's not funny that person killed themselves. The situation itself is funny. Yeah, and that's where we're here. Is it's not funny that these women are having these problems. It's not funny that Renee Good went through and died.
No.
But the situation that she put herself in and the resulting attempt to martyr her like George Floyd is a juxtaposition that belongs in an SNL skit. It's
Speaking of like the comedic element, and I know that you're probably trying to wrap up, and I keep talking, but the SNL stuff, but the comedic element, we need like a main Babylon Bee or The Onion or whatever you want to call it. We need something here that's just mocking the nonsense that's going on here. There was a social media page that posted a ridiculous supposed bill that was being presented.
the lawnmower registration.
The lawnmower registration bill, which apparently wasn't real, but but it was so believable. I was like, that would have been a perfect The Onion or like Maine's whatever you want to call it. I think The Onion is one of those ones that does fake stories, but that would have been a perfect fake story post, because like that type of stuff is so believable. So many people were upset about it, but nobody was like, that could never happen. It's like, we could definitely see the current administration doing this. They need to raise more money in taxes so they can give it to NGOs that are defrauding the American people. So obviously they would do whatever they can to raise those additional taxes.
Well, and again, we're in an element now where like you can't tell fiction from reality anymore.
100%.
Where you find out one day that Jeffrey Epstein has absolutely nothing to do with anything at all, and he's just some weird guy that people were on an island with, don't talk about anymore. Then 8 million pages of his emails and relative correspondences and whatnot come out, and oh yeah, he's in everything. He's in your underwear drawer. He's everything, everywhere, all the time. Like they just found out. People are curious now. So independent of the Epstein files, there are people going around copy pasting his email from the Epstein file releases into different platforms and finding that he was registered all over the internet. He had a War Thunder account.
What is that?
So that's one of the more popular war games. It involves tanks and that kind of thing. It's not World of Tanks. It's the other one with tanks. And so it's a very popular thing. So he was apparently banned off of Xbox Live. As well. So like intermingled with all the heinous stuff he was doing and all the high level trading and meeting with all these world leaders like the Rothschilds, Epstein's also talking shit in a COD lobby, like just swilling Mountain Dew, eating Doritos, and blowing kids away in the, well, no, I shouldn't say it like that. But there's all, it's like we're seeing this right here. Like these people in their state of mind with this type of altered chemicals could not handle the Epstein files being true to them. This is why they default to, well, Trump's in the Epstein files. I don't care whoever else is in there. Trump is in there. The issue is it's not so much that they don't want to hear it. It's that they can't. If you take a look at these side effects right here, imagine telling them everything Alex Jones has said for 20 years is 1000% true. They are vampires. They are goblins. They are in the sewers. And it's, it's like,
but
how do you tell them?
So your point here is very well taken. I remember there's a certain medication that I haven't, as far as I'm aware, I haven't been around someone who's on this medication in a while, but I remember like I met somebody who was on it, started having conversations with them. And after that, I was able to peg everybody else I knew who was on that medication. Like I know that they're on it, because one of the things that it inhibited is their ability to have a rational conversation, right? Let's work our way through this. They couldn't do it. It would end up being all this jumping around and going over here. And it's like, wait a second, we're over here. We're having this conversation. And then like now all of a sudden we're over here. You couldn't have a linear, rational conversation. And so again, is it any surprise when you mess with the chemical balance of the human body, the human brain, that it inhibits people's ability to think rationally? Like it's crazy to suggest otherwise. Unfortunately, far too many people are bought into this idea that like because they've been told it. Like partly I'm a little bit reminded of the Joker from Batman The Dark Knight, where basically that like people aren't worried about something as long as they're told that it's part of the plan. When it's the official plan and the official story, nobody gets upset, right? Like again, I think it was like if some gangbangers were to get shot, nobody would care. But if you say something about like kids in a bus, now everybody. But it's partly because whether or not it's part of the plan. And so you tell people, you build a narrative, and people believe things not based on truth, but based on narrative. And is it the narrative that I like? And the narrative is that some people they have a chemical imbalance, and like you just need to give them medication in order to fix that chemical imbalance. And they just buy it. And they don't question it. And there's like, I remember I was having a conversation with somebody recently about this in particular. And this person is very liberal, and I help them with their finances. And so I was like, I'm going to leave that alone. I'm not going to like, there are times where I do engage in stuff where I just can't help myself. But this was one where I had a little bit of wherewithal to be like, I'm just going to let that, I'm going to let that go because it's not going to go anywhere good. But yeah, there are so many people that just like buy into that this is the solution. And if you question it, then you're anti-mental health, which is so, there's so many frustrating things about like the narratives that people believe. That's the thing that has me like, so we'll call it black pilled. I'm trying to be white pilled. I try to behave like I'm white pilled and try to do everything I can, but it's hard when so many people have bought the lie and they've bought it. So they've swallowed it whole. It's how do we move forward? I think that's the question.
Well, the best thing I've come up with is that a lot of folks are behaving this way because they're bored. I see a lot of people who see their lives as pointless, that they are just going to work and they are just putting in the hours. They are dropping Junior and Sally off at daycare and they are barely getting by and everything's pointless. So having a fight under any circumstances adds some type of value to their existence. And this, I think, is best met and conquered by giving people a desire to do something with themselves. And as it just so happens, I mean, I brought this up as an example to what you were talking about, people buying the lie. As it just so happens, though, NASA just announced back on the 22nd of January that they are testing Wernher von Braun's nuclear thermal rocket engines. Now, these are currently what they're doing with the testing on them right now, which is not in orbit yet. This is just ground testing. They believe that these rockets will be able to take us from Earth's orbit to Martian orbit in 45 days. Okay, wow. Ordinarily, we were taking 300 days to get between those 2 points.
Wow.
So we now have an opportunity to take a look at all these people that feel very worthless in their lives and be like, hey, you want to do Star Trek, but real life? And they go, okay, intermingled with this, we have AI. And I don't know if you've checked this out yet. We're not going to go through it tonight, but maybe another time. This is AI 2027. This is a very important report. I can send this to you, but this report is from 2025, the early part of 24, excuse me. And what this does is it creates a, let me just skip down to the bottom where we see everything presented, maybe. There we go. So basically what happens with this is that the AI is going to get plugged into Stargate. You remember Stargate, the big data center that Trump was talking about?
Yeah.
So Stargate, right now, what ChatGPT is doing fits in a warehouse. Just a regular old, drop off your beer cases warehouse. Stargate is going to elevate that to roughly the size of like a airbase. Okay, so at that point, the AI achieves super intelligence. And at that point, what it is it's smarter than any one human, but not smarter than us all. It's not inventing new information. It's just capable of processing information better than any human being in any circumstance. Right now, it's on that level, close to it, but it's not able to remain consistent. When it reaches godlike intelligence, though, is that at this point, it will be able to come up with its own abstract thinking. This is the big problem with AI right now, is it can reason, but it can't abstract think. And what an example of this is that when you look at a cloud and you see a bunny rabbit, that's abstract thinking. The AI can't do that. It can try to meet and guess what you want it to do with a picture of a cloud, but it itself cannot look at that picture and say, there's a bunny rabbit there. The godlike intelligence allows it to do that. Again, not more intelligent than a human being at this point, not inventing new information, simply able to connect abstract ideas. From there, this isn't 27, by the way. This isn't 2030, 2050, 2060. This is next year when it reaches godlike intelligence. I'm telling you. This is what the report explains. And so at that point, the human labor market's obliterated because Optimus and the robots can now operate on a mass swarm level. So these things will teach themselves. So one makes an error, thousands of them learn from it immediately. And so this is the point where we reach the post-scarcity society. Now, you and I both know that's a bad thing. When people aren't needed to do things and we're just left to our own devices, well, that's how you get Mad Max. That's how you get Mad Max real fast. So let's do Star Trek. We got the AI making sure that everything's working fine. Old Optimus can wipe all the butts at the nursing homes. Let's go to Mars. And beyond that, let's go to Pluto. Voyager found something freaky out there beyond the heliosphere. Let's find out what it is. Let's take a ride. And that's... I think that's how to fix that, though, Chuck, is to give people the idea that, like, the space, the final frontier, aim for that, the limitless idea. And that'll stop this crazy fighting on Earth because we won't be trapped to, like, crabs in a bucket.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be interesting to see what happens. I remain somewhat, I see AI as obviously a tool that we can't avoid using, but I'm a little skeptical about where it's going to go. But like, regardless of whether or not it reaches godlike powers or intelligence, and it's able to think abstractly in the real world, it is definitely going. Regardless, it's going to take away jobs, right? And it is going to obliterate the like, if you are not an intelligent, creative thinker, somebody who's like a cut above the rest, it's going to be hard for you to have anything, because other people are going to be able to use AI and be so much more productive than the people who are not using AI and don't know how to use AI, right? And are not trying to figure that out. Because right now, AI, again, this is kind of my point of AI. AI is great if you know how to use it, right? If you know the inputs that you need to put in to get out of it what you need to get out of it, like you can be very, very successful. But if you don't have that base level of intellect or intelligence or creative problem solving capacity, like, AI will help you, but not as much as you need it to, and it actually might hurt you if you don't know how to use it. And I don't, again, who knows? We'll see. AI may surprise me and do more than I think it can. But at this point, I just think of AI as being a very complex computer. And that's just, it is what it is, right? And it's just got so much more firepower and can do so much more, and that will continue. I question whether or not it will be able to reach true abstract thought, but I have been wrong before. So,
and with that, though, we come to an end for this episode of Maynardville. Now, Chuck, I really appreciate you coming on here and going through the wild ride of all these crazy topics, and Epstein, of course, and my off-the-wall comments. And I appreciate you just jumping into it as well without like the big lead up and the explanation, the breakdown, just coming in as the intros are rolling and coming in and rolling with them. Appreciate it.
Yeah, happy to do it.
As always, guys, we're here on Wednesdays at 6:30. Occasionally I jump on if something crazy happens, but you can catch us back here at 6:30 again. And I hope to have Chuck back some other time. In the meantime, though, good luck